Hey everybody, Steve Burton here at Scale to Sell. Thanks for joining us today. We've got another edition, another podcast, number 43. And actually, we've talked about this before, but now we have a platform. Instead of going through my M&A experts and getting that value, we have, I think, a simplified version to do it, but gives you even more detailed information about your business. We're going to talk about today unlocking the current value and the dream value of your business with Jason Early, the founder of RISR. Came across this software just recently at a CEPA conference, a Certified Exit Planning Conference down in Florida here recently, and was really impressed with it by the detail. I think I know you guys put a whole lot of work into this, but it seems like it's just a lot put out there in a brief report. And you've heard me talk about it here. We've talked about it on the podcast about knowing your value, protecting your value, and more importantly, growing that value. But Jason, we appreciate you joining us here on the podcast.
Yeah, Steve, it's great to be here. Appreciate you all having us. Look forward to the conversation.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how RISR came about, and we'll get into more detail. But let's start with an introduction, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll skip over the details about myself because I'm not certain anybody cares all that much about that, and I'll talk a little bit about
cool.
How we started RISR. I started my career in financial services, and so I'm outside of Philadelphia, and I spent 7 years with a great planning and advisory firm here that had $4 or $5 billion in the RIA and did a lot of heavy planning, specifically with business owners. And so I had a real front row seat at the very start of my career with how financial advisors provided advice to business owners. And so I think Steve Jobs said you can only connect the dots looking backwards, and that's certainly true for me. When I look back on that time, it was incredibly formative, and who knew at the time where it would lead. But from there, I knew I wanted to do some different things, and so spent 2 or 3 years with a e-learning and technology consulting platform. That was, I learned an awful lot during that time in my career, and then spent the last 7 or 8 years leading really the first business valuation place in the space, and really a wealth tech business that really created the market. And so it was on the heels of that experience that we launched RISR. And our thesis is simple, Steve. From the onset of building RISR, what we believe is that owners of private companies, business owners, need better advice, and that the advisors that serve them need better tools and technology. And so everything that we do is about deepening relationships between business owners and financial advisors. And so in our view, there are a lot of great platforms out there to help owners think about their business and go deeper on their business in all sorts of different areas. But we attack this problem from the lens of financial advice. And so we really want to enable those that are powering or providing financial advice to business owners with the tools and technology to do so. So, that's what we're up to. And, those are the types of problems that get us out of bed every day.
We talk about, for business owners, it represents for about 80% of most business owners' net worth. And if you're an employee or anybody else, you can look up your 401k, your brokerage account, your money in your CDs or cryptocurrency or whatever you own. But most business owners equate where they're at with their business, the health of their business, to what's the bottom line? Am I making more money than I did last year? And that. But it's more to that. Eventually, if it's your largest asset, one, you want to know, I think on an annual basis, of where you were last year compared to this year. And what's the marketplace say that value is worth? Right? Not what you think, what you've read, but some realistic numbers out there. And just a little bit, Jason, if you don't mind, about knowing the value. And I believe on an annualized basis, like you would get a doctor checkup, a dental checkup or whatever, it's just, it kind of shows you the overall health compared to other people in your industry, right?
I think that's well said. And I think, again, coming at it from the lens of financial advice, in our view, for really 25 years now, advisors have had access to great tools and technology to give great advice to the individual or the family or the household. But advisors have been put in a position where they've got to treat the business like every other asset on the balance sheet. So to your point, most advisors, they'll sit across from the business owner and they're going through discovery or they're fact finding. And what do? They say, Steve, tell me what's in the 401k, what's in the brokerage account, what's the house worth, and what's the business worth? And they one, take the owner's word for it, and two, they just use it as a plug-in number. And if what you said is correct, which I believe it is, that, for most business owners, it's some 80% plus of their net worth, that's criminal. When you think about, providing advice to the owner of a business where the 80% of their net worth is in this asset, and you're treating it as a plug-in number. And so that is one of the chief problems that we set out to solve, which is, how can you get better clarity into that asset, and ultimately provide better advice as a result? And so, owners have data that's all over the place. It's disparate, it's disorganized. And, from an advisor's perspective, it can be really difficult to pull that data in, analyze it, and surface any relevant insights. And so that's what our technology does. It allows the advisor to gain clarity in an area that is typically opaque.
No doubt. And knowing the current value of it for all the reasons, there's so many reasons, but in their software, when I first saw it, I saw something called dream value. And I wasn't sure what that is. That what I hope the business will be worth in a few years' time, but really a little bit about the current value and relationship to the dream value. Describe the dream value, if you don't mind.
Yeah, this is, again, going back to the belief or the attacking this problem from the lens of advice or planning. Forget who said it, but everybody knows the quote that hope is not a strategy. And that's typically how most owners think about the business, right? They were good at something. I was a baker, and so I started a bakery, right? And they became accidental business owners, and they operate that business for a long, long time. And then they wake up one day and say, I'm done. And the market's going to tell you at that time the value of the business, right? If you wake up one day and say, I'm going to transact and I'm going to go to market, the market's going to tell you exactly what the business is worth. In our view, to have any control over the value of the business, you got to know the value to begin with. So current value is critically important. And so our software helps you identify the current value of the business. But what you're hitting on is what we call the dream value, which is, what does the business actually need to be worth to accomplish all of your stated goals and objectives? Meaning, if you want X, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in retirement, if you want to fully fund education for your kids or your grandkids, if you want to pay for weddings, if you want to, give to these charitable organizations, if these are all goals, hopes, and dreams, what does the business need to be worth to accomplish that? And nobody thinks about that. And so, back to hope is not a strategy. Most owners hope that when they build the business, when they decide to retire and perhaps transition or transact, they hope like hell that the windfall that's created from the sale of their most important asset accomplishes all those things. And so more often than not, they're adjusting their goals, hopes, and dreams to account for whatever the transaction delivered. And so in our view, if you understand the current value today, and then you understand what drives value in the business, or what drags on value based on the risks, be it operational risks or equity risk or things like that, now you can take some measured control over that value. You can put a plan in place, meaning, are you on track or off track? The one thing that we see all the time that we love, Steve, is the dream value is lower than the current value, meaning the current value of the business is X. And if I want to accomplish all these things, I only need it to be Y, and that's lower. That's a beautiful thing. Or, there's a delta there, but you've got plenty of time, right? And based on your current growth rate, you're going to get there in plenty of time. And so we love to see, stated goals and objectives align with the reality. And if not, brilliant folks like you help them get there.
Another question is, I was just out at a board meeting out in Wisconsin. I'm on a board of a Christian college out there. And the first time ever, AI was a conversation piece there at the college of how it's going to impact the classroom. It's impacting the ministry of the church, and it's impacting just business in general. Here's my point. We've got a question about assuming that your value is right here, right now. It will always be at least that. So a question to you is not just around AI, but anything. What's the single largest mistake that people make in knowing once they find out their value? But is that, I guess it's a mistake that they just don't even know the value, right? How do you get to grow or protect it if you don't know it? But what would you say would be a big mistake that people make?
You nailed it. It's flying blind, right? The biggest mistake is not paying any attention to the value of the business, what drives value in the business, what are risks to the value of the business. Because here are what we found in doing this, and the most popular part of our report, which I never thought would be the case, is a risk assessment that, based on the qualitative questions that we ask the owner throughout the throughout the course of the UI, UX, throughout the software, we'll surface insights across operational risks, things like owner dependency, key person dependency, customer concentration, on and on and on. Most owners know these things intuitively, right? That if the business depends on me, that's not a great thing for the transferable value of the business. But nobody's held up the mirror in front of them and said, hey, have you thought about how this is dragging on the value of your business? And have you thought about, taking some action steps to mitigate that value? And so we think that it's critically important for owners to stop and think about this. And it's like the old adage, spend some time on the business, not in the business. And having somebody to hold up that mirror and help them think through that's critically important.
And have it right there in your face in a report, instead of just somebody telling you. And even if you know it, sometimes the report just, okay, now I get it. And especially if you're getting closer to that exit timeline, things that will devalue your business. You just mentioned it right there. Most of your business is tied up with one or two people, one or two companies, and all something happens to one of them, there goes half the value of your business. Or it's too dependent, as most of business owners were the engine of the business or whatever. And so the software was spelled out. Does it also show you, if you fix that, how it increases the value? Can you play around with the numbers there a little bit?
Yeah, you can play with the numbers to understand how, as you change these risks, what that does to the value, no doubt. And so I think, you hit on an important point there, which is most owners are the engine of the business. And a lot of them, quite frankly, wear it as a badge of honor. I've got all the relationships, business depends on me. Until, again, someone holds up the mirror and says, that's not a great thing for the transferable value of the business, right? You want your business to operate without you. You want to be able to go away, take a vacation or walk away from the business, and everything not fall apart. It's like the old, the E-myth, right? If your business depends on you, you don't have a business, you have a job, and it's the worst job in the world because you work for a lunatic. That's the line. So you want to build a business that operates without you having to be in the business, or at least that drives value in business. So again, we find that far too often owners don't take the time, and nobody's grabbing them by the shoulders and shaking them to make them sit down and think about, what are my stated goals and objectives, right? Because as we know, everybody exits their business someday, some way. And so far too often we see the outcomes not aligned to stated goals and objectives. And more times than not, it's because the owner hasn't gone through an exercise like that. And so we think that that's super important, as you alluded to at the start of the show. There is a demographic tidal wave. There is a exorbitant amount of baby boomers that own businesses that are going to be transitioning or transacting in the coming years.
And it's even starting to drift into the Generation Xers. I mean, they're turning 60 right now, so they're not too far behind. You made a couple points right there and got me thinking a little bit off course right here. So even if it's somebody that doesn't think they're going to exit their business, as I joke with them, you're going to exit one of two ways. You're going to exit on your own terms. You're going to exit in a box, but you will exit the business because you're not going to live forever, right? But to your point, if they have this report and they take it to heart and they start taking the things and delegating, having systems, processes in place, people in place, even if they decide to keep the business forever until they fall off the planet, by having things in place right here, they're going to have the ability to have some more time off, either because you desire more time off or you're forced to because of health or other issues. So I think that's an important part. I mean, I think you would agree on that, just knowing the value and knowing the strengths and weaknesses in your business and being able to look at that on an annualized basis. Right, Jason? I mean, it makes sense to me.
The valuation or understanding your business, it's a process, right? It happens. It's not a one-time event. It changes as your business changes. So to your point, as you add your largest client, as you, God forbid, lose your most important employee, or you lose a customer, or a supplier goes out of business, all of these things impact your business. And so it is important to understand, certainly on an annual basis, if not more frequently than that.
A little sideways, Adam, my co-host here on Scale to Sell, and my youngest son, he's an attorney, worked with us, he's really good at marketing. A couple of just some softer questions. What's your favorite business book right now? Do you have one that jumps out at you?
I'm not real smart. And so there's a guy by the name of Patrick Lencioni, and Patrick Lencioni writes these incredible, business and leadership fables that are incredibly easy to read. And I've read virtually all of them. Perhaps my two favorite, if I had to pick two, Five Dysfunctions of a Team or the Five Temptations, maybe it's Four or Five Temptations of a CEO. They're great, leadership style books, and he's an incredible writer.
How would you describe your leadership skill? I mean, is there something, everybody has a unique ability of some type or other, whether it's assembling a team or delegation or whatever it might be. What would you consider your leadership skill?
That's a great question. I think, and I forget where this concept originated. Maybe it was an author, Greenleaf, servant leadership. And he talked a lot about servant leadership. I've always resonated with that. I've always viewed at all sorts of different, parts of my career, and certainly now here at RISR. I think of my job as clearing obstacles for the rest of the team, and so serving the rest of the team to make darn sure that they're able to do what they set out to do. Because this is certainly true for us, and we're a small team, but in every single corner of our organization, if you look at the functional areas, the person leading those functional areas is far better suited to lead that group than me. And so everything I'm doing is to try and clear obstacles and unblock them. And so I think that ties in nicely to some of the servant leadership topics and style of leadership.
Any final, we have some offers here for them when we wrap up. We partnered up with your company. We've now got access to the software ourselves, and we're going to bring more of our teammates over. But some other stats, and perhaps you've heard of these too, is that again, only about 20 to 30% of all businesses will ever successfully sell. That's gonna liquidate through liquidation of a business, or just falling apart, and what was of some value or great value falling apart and being worth less or even unmarketable. But we're going to talk about that opportunity here in just a minute. But any final thoughts of just, we want to improve that. I think it's criminal. It's a crime to even something that might have provided a great income, a lifestyle for you, to not be able to transition that, whether it's to a family member, third party, private equity, or whoever it might be. But any final thoughts as I give them that offer here at the end of our conversation?
Yeah, this is something that we are incredibly passionate about. So I love that you went down this path, and you're exactly right. I think it's 23% of businesses ever transact. And so if that's the case, right, the lion's share of businesses don't transact. So what happens? They either, transition to the next generation, transition to employees, or they just shut the doors one day and cease to exist. And so in our view, again, there's too much of a gap in terms of, there's a wide gap between the outcomes and the goals and objectives. And so part of what we've got coming out in just 30 or 60 days here this summer, 2025, as we record this, is a real, a succession planning deliverable, which is to say, help the owner understand, and prioritize what their objectives are, and then give them a path to exit. So help them understand that based on their priorities, this is the best path. Maybe it's transition, in your case, transition to your, I think you said eldest son who works with you, right? So transition to your son, or transition to employees, or if you're optimizing for top dollar, that might not be it. And so it might be a strategic sale to third party or private equity. And so we want to help facilitate that.
Hey, I'm working with a number of businesses now that didn't listen, and burnout sets in, disagreement sets in with the partner of some kind, or some other health related issue. Something makes that business worth less than it is right now. Trying to time the sell or exit of your business is very difficult. Some say it's like trying to time the stock market, right? Good luck on that one. Right now, as you mentioned, the current value may be more than the dream value. So exiting now might be the best time frame. And even if it's a partial sell, taking some chips off the table, taking some profit, and then the 30% you retain of the business might be worth way more in the future than because you brought in private equity or something. I would consider that. As we're wrapping up here with Jason with RISR, we have an opportunity for you. If you go to scale2sell.com/value, scale2sell.com/value, we will prepare for you at no cost. Now, you have to get a few bits of information to us. You do that, we will get it to you at no cost and give you some of this powerful information that Jason was talking about. And again, scale2sell.com. And Jason, I'd look to have you back now that you mentioned the transition strategy, updating that. So after 60, 90 days, you've got it up and rolling out there. I'd like to have you back because that is a big part of every business. What happens to the business if you have to exit or want to exit? And succession planning is one of those things that people put off and put off and put off, and then sometimes until it's too late. So knowing your options. Well, again, family members, well, I'll just sell it to my family members. Okay. That only works about 30% of the time successfully. So there is that one. So any and all those other options. Any final thoughts, Jason, as we're wrapping up here?
Now, Steve, I would just end where I started, which is thanking you for having us, on the show and being a great partner to RISR, and for the work that you're doing in your community with the business owners that you serve. As we talked about, the statistics are staggering when it comes to the amount of business owners that are going to be transitioning and transacting, and they need help. They need quality advice, and so we need more people like you focused on that market and helping facilitate that. So we appreciate you.
I would say I've seen many of these software programs out there. Yours is the most user-friendly. I love the report. I think it's something they can benchmark, look at this year's value, compare it to next year's value, and see what improvements you've made to that value. Not just profitability, but true value, increasing the value of your largest asset. So once again, thanks, Jason from RISR. And guys, remember, if you want your free analysis done, go to scaletosell.com/value, scaletosell.com/value. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care.